Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. Today we're going to be diving a bit deeper into how it came to be that I sort of started to identify as being someone fully recovered from an eating disorder. I think everyone's experience with this would be so different, but we don't often talk about the nuances of how you start to become confident that you have reached a place of full recovery and how long that can take and what that can look like and what are some signs to look for. I think, like I have said in a previous video, a more recent one, that we do need to have more in-depth discussions about what full recovery means to each individual and how they come to recognize that that's where they're at, and to make space for the fact that we talk about full recovery and all the wonderful, magical things it gives you in life, but also making space for being human and still having emotions and being vulnerable and needing help, and that fully recovered does not mean superhero, right? So before we dive into how I started to become confident in referring to myself as fully recovered, it is important to know that I didn't know full recovery was a thing for a really long time as I was going through recovery, like years in. I went into recovery at 25. I had what would have been a diagnosable eating disorder from 19, but had a lifetime of disordered stuff going on with my body and food. I've detailed that a little bit more as far as body image struggles and just my relationship with food never really being free or flexible. Really, my memory of food and body has always been pretty disordered, but full-fledged eating disorder by the age of 19. So I was very lucky to have a really phenomenal GP who referred me on to a great psychologist who really did the deeper work with me. She didn't just deal with the surface stuff. She went into the deep childhood, relationship, attachment, self-image, self-esteem element of who I was as a person, because she could sense that's where the eating disorder had come from. And she was absolutely correct. However, she really didn't give me any indication that this recovery process was anything other than lifelong, long-term, never-ending. She didn't ever explicitly say, and I don't think we ever really discussed, am I ever just going to be without this? Am I just going to get over it one day? And you also have to know that I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about eating disorders these days, but when I first went into recovery, I had no knowledge of them outside of the passing cursory societal stereotype of anorexia. I did not understand eating disorders. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because this space here online and what we built with my diary is how I learned all this stuff that was just mind-blowing to me, that I could have been so ignorant about something I was in for 6 years. And so going into it, I didn't understand. I didn't even know what inpatient treatment was. I didn't know anything. I knew nothing. And so I really just took the guidance of my, again, I will say again, wonderful life-saving psychologist. And so I had seen some discourse online. There wasn't really a recovery community outside of, say, Tumblr, where I was very lucky. I never really saw anything other than helpful content there. And most people there was that party line that it is about remission and it's lifelong and you learn to manage it and you just deal with the thoughts and the urges for the rest of your life. And that seemed fine to me when I was in the pink cloud of recovery, which was probably the first year and a half or so. Was really I was mostly grateful. It was really hard. It was freaking hard work, but I was so I was very motivated the first year and a half, very, very motivated. Really got back into my life, got back in touch with old friends, started to obviously do all of the important recovery challengey things. But the big thing for me was the stuff I was doing with my psychologist, which was like a reawakening to me, that I didn't have to be awful and cruel and abusive to myself, and that, I could challenge these beliefs and notions that I just internalized about who I was as a person. And then the pink cloud kind of started to wear off, and I was still working in terms of challenging the foods and the anxieties and the going out for dinner and the eating alone and the eating without being distracted and all those little steps towards those bigger outcomes we want to get to. And I was kind of like lost in all the minutiae of that. And then it started to head towards my 3-year recovery anniversary. And each year before, I had been quite proud and, gone out with family and friends to celebrate, and was quite reflective on those days. And just gratitude was just that overwhelming sense that I had for so much of that time. And I just kind of didn't care as the 3-year mark approached. And I remember having a glass of wine with my mum, and she said, I try to talk to you about your 3-year and what you'd like to do for it, and you just don't seem that interested. Is everything okay? Like, are you still on track? I think trying to gauge whether or not I was even still in recovery, because I just seemed so blah about it, and just so not even angry at it or frustrated. I was just so indifferent. And I said to her, it's been 3 years and I'm working as hard as I did on day one. And if that's what I have to do to stay healthy and to, be well, that's what I'll do. But I'm just now wrestling, good or bad, with the fact that I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I guess I'm just kind of in a phase of acceptance and indifference, because I'm having to accept it's going to be decades of working this hard. And then I started to notice that I was having thoughts around, they weren't even like restrictive thoughts, they were paranoid thoughts. I started to get really paranoid about my recovery choices. I think that I had gone like past the tipping point of self-vigilance, and I was just now hyper paranoid about everything I was doing. Because I was also wrestling with this idea of dealing with this for the rest of my life, and having to be this on myself and surveilling myself so closely that it wouldn't be, oh, do you want soy milk or do you want full cream milk? Oh, I'll just have the soy milk. It would be, well, why do you want the soy milk? And should you just have is there any anxiety here? And do you feel this? And what about that? And check in with this. And yesterday you had, and it was like, holy moly, it sounded so much like my eating disorder chatter that I was like, panic station, something's really, really wrong. And I opened up to my sister about it, and we had a chat, and, sort of got to the bottom of about what some of this stuff was about. And that was this realization of, doing this level of work forever just felt like it wasn't going to leave a lot of room for everything else I wanted to recover for, right? And she encouraged me to talk to you guys about it, which I did, and you were wonderful. And I was saying in the video that, I'm wrestling with the fact I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. And I had a couple of people respond in the comments and say, please don't say that. I find that really discouraging and really disconcerting. It's not true. And at first my response was like, well, don't tell me what my process is. And this is what I've been told by professionals. And, I don't know what else to do but take their advice, because they helped to save my life, which they did. You can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time, right? And then I got emails kind of directing me towards who else? Carolyn Costin and other people in the field who have lived experience and are professionals, and who are experts who talk about their lived experience and being fully recovered. And it was the first time I had ever heard it, which is why I'm so grateful for the recovery community, because there really wasn't this platform or place to go and immediately look at people's experiences and the array of ways that people talk about recovery and find kind of something that resonates with you. There just wasn't that much to choose from. And so if you wanted to find an alternative, you had to go digging, but I just kind of accepted that's how it was. And I remember this like fresh excitement of like, oh my God, am I really not done? Like, is there another level to this? Is there another level of freedom and lack of chaos and, confidence in your choices? And I started to look into it and reading about other people's experiences. And so much of it actually resonated with me, that it wasn't so much about the choices I was making or what I was drawn to or what my cravings told me or how often I was hungry or, my body image was way better. I wasn't body checking, like all the behaviors and everything were gone. But this hyper paranoid vigilance was just so like deafening and so all consuming. But everything else, when I looked at what it was to be fully recovered, I was like, tick, 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 tick. And the only chatter that was left was this paranoid chatter. And I realized if I had been told that I was fully recovered, I probably already would have sort of acknowledged that I was there by then. I hadn't used behaviors in so long. all those markers had improved like crazy for a long period of time, a period of time which could have passed where I could have gone, if I know that I can be fully recovered, I'd kind of put it around this period when I was still hyper vigilant. And so I thought that I'd experiment with it a little bit and stop interrogating myself over my choices and just let my choices be and let myself be drawn to the food I was drawn to, or make my coffee the way that I wanted it, and to engage in movement the way that I wanted, and to feel okay to get changed and check my outfit and walk out the door knowing it wasn't a body check. And as it turned out, I really was just in a place where I needed to relax into my healthy self, to relax into my choices, and to get rid of that chatter, that hyper vigilant thinking. And it made the world of difference to know that it wasn't about constant forward momentum forever and ever and challenging and thinking and analyzing. It was about saying, I've done the work. My brain has transitioned over into this healthy way of responding to food and movement and my body. And now I just have to let it happen. It's kind of like becoming fluent in a language, but still going to class every day and taking every test and exam and studying like crazy, even though you're already fluent, right? That's the only analogy I can really think of off the top of my head. But it was like I just let myself speak the language without questioning myself and without having to go back and check the textbook all the time, right? And make sure that every new day was a big challenge. It was just, the challenge was now to just live. So I gave that a bit of energy for a while. But then I think, and this is why I find it when people say to me, like, how did you know when you were fully recovered? How did you identify what was the period? The reason I find it difficult to pinpoint is because it probably was during that time when I was still living under the assumption that this was going to be forever and I would be in remission. So I'd say it was probably a couple of years, like a year and a half, a couple of years in. I probably, if I'd been aware of full recovery at that point, I would have said I was fully recovered. But it was only a few more months. I really felt really confident that I was fully recovered. And the only surveilling of myself was just observing that, you know, my patterns weren't changing, my thoughts weren't changing. I wasn't having intrusive eating disorder self-thoughts. I had no urges to use behaviors. And enough time passed where I'd kind of challenged everything over and over and over again. And then they weren't challenges anymore. Now I was just living them. I was going out for dinner with friends and going on dates and being able to drink beer and wine and have spontaneous ice cream and to eat food I really didn't like that much but had to eat out of necessity and didn't bother me, to engage in movement in a way that felt more intuitive. My body image wasn't ruling my day or telling me who I was and what my value was or whether I was going to have a good or a bad day. I didn't weigh myself. It was all that stuff which just, on top of the fact that my head was quiet, that there wasn't abusive chatter, that there weren't thoughts of behaviors or compensation or anything like that, it just kind of naturally flowed. And it wasn't until I would be asked about it. It's interesting. I never really sat and like asked myself, am I fully recovered? It was only if other people would ask me or ask me like, what do you consider yourself? Are you in recovery? And I would answer, no, I really feel like I'm fully recovered. But it's not like, you know, being accepted to Hogwarts and a letter appears by owl. I wish that was the case, because then I'd be living in Harry Potter land, not real world land. And 2021 real world land does not sound as much fun as Harry Potter land, even in the later movies. What are you talking about? So, no, you don't reach a point where you are just, you know, this date at this time, I just know. But it's this nice growing, building confidence and normality. It's just this stuff that you used to find so difficult or so euphoric at times and so amazing that you could do it, like just pop out and buy chocolate and not be fazed by it, is just so normal and just so like breathing, like drinking water, like, you know, it just is. And on the other side of that, which I've talked about recently as well, I think I also believed that, you know, emotionally I was bulletproof, that life-wise I was bulletproof, and I had a couple of good years there where that really felt like the case, and then obviously Dad got sick, and then everything just kind of spiraled over the next 18 months to 2 years life-wise. And I had to learn the hard way that fully recovered is not an enormous gift. It is not a fix for being a vulnerable, growing person who is trying, right? But as far as eating disorder, thoughts or urges or behaviors, it's not a feature. And it was a really great thing to, read Carolyn Costin's definition of full recovery, which I personally really resonate with. Maybe other people will have different responses to it, but I read it and really it made sense to me. And it was a comforting thing to know that I could see myself in that, and that I had worked really hard, and it wasn't until later on that I was a bit like, I really wish I'd known this going in. Well, I guess it's double-edged sword. If I'd known going in, then I'd have an expectation. So I guess it was kind of a gift in that regard. I had no expectation. I just knew I wanted to feel better. And then full recovery becoming this possibility down the track, maybe that benefited me. I don't know. Maybe not having that expectation in my mind was a benefit. Who knows? But yes, it is something which I could really identify based on thoughts, behaviors, and just how I dealt with life. That I don't deal with life destructively. I don't punish myself or hurt myself. I don't isolate myself. I ask for help. I nourish myself. I'm kind to myself, but I'm not always perfect at, coping or being an adult. It's not a cure for being a human being. It's not a cure for being a person and going through difficult times. But yeah, just wanted to share a little bit of that thinking and my experience around full recovery. I think it can be a really important thing for people to be aware of. It's up to you as an individual whether or not you resonate with that, and that's something that's on your recovery map. I'm not going to enforce full recovery on anyone. If it's something that feels like it could be on your map, then I'd really encourage you to explore all kinds of stories of full recovery and see if you can see yourself in any of those. There's so many avenues to full recovery as well, whether it's with treatment or without. We now know there are many people who are fully recovered. And as always, just acknowledging my immense privilege to be able to have received treatment from a psychologist. I didn't have a team or inpatient, but that doesn't take away from the fact I was very, very fortunate to have a psychologist. But yes, it is something I'm really passionate about, to let people know that, if it's something that you want to explore, I'd really encourage you to do that. It was really a lifesaver for me. Okay. Sending you guys a ton of love. Let me know your thoughts on full recovery, and if you fully recovered, what helped you to realize it. If you feel like you're getting there, do you have any questions about that? Let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys in another video next week. I think, are we on track for that content calendar wise? I'll have to check with my content manager, but I think so. Anyway, guys, I'm sending you a ton of love. You take care of yourselves. I'll be doing that very quietly here in Sydney. Much love. Take care. Bye, guys. It was like I had